In 2012, we have a sequence of major international meetings, the G8 meeting, Rio Plus 20 meeting, the G20 meeting, all of which will be considering agriculture. And our expectation is that this report will have an impact on what is being decided at those meetings, and also what is being decided in the governments of both the donor and the African partner countries.
It will be fitting for the Montpellier Panel to now look at the issue of building the resilience of the smallholder farmer. What assets do we need and what policies do we need to make sure we bring all the supporting sectors? It's not just agriculture, it's health, it's the financial sector, it's the social services sector, it's the multiplicity of actors that now have to zero in and bring the resources to build the resilience of our smallholder farmers.
Resilience is going to be a major theme of the Montpellier Panel report. In very simple terms, what resilience does is to measure or assess the capacity of agricultural growth or agricultural development to withstand stress and shock. The shocks can come in many different forms. They may be new pests or diseases, they may be a failure of the market, it may result from extreme weather events, the droughts and floods and cyclones that are afflicting Africa today. So we've got to find ways of ensuring that crops and livestock are more resilient to those particular climate change stresses and shocks.
Agriculture has a crucial role to play in any medium to long-term economic development strategy for Africa. What are the key institutional blockages that prevent farmers from developing? And some of that is likely to come down to rural roads. One of the highest return investments that you can make is rural roads to enable farmers, to get their goods to market. And we're not talking about great continental developments here. We're talking about, in many cases, local infrastructure.
The other challenge is also access to food. In places where there's enough food, the infrastructure is not there to ensure that food can be transferred to the places where there's some deficit of food. I could also mention the issue of poor access to inputs, fertilizer, seeds, irrigation water, agricultural equipment. Those things, those inputs that were needed to improve productivity and to improve the agricultural productivity, those things were not available to the farmer.
I don't think we can pretend that we can achieve complete resilience, but we can work towards more resilience, particularly to drought or floods through, for example, better crop varieties, better agronomic practices, and better understanding of how the agricultural system works.
You can reduce instability in agriculture through the kind of farming system you adopt. Irrigation is a good way of reducing risk if you have assured water supplies. More diversified farming systems can be more stable. Unfortunately, they come at a price. You should really be producing more of those things that are most productive, either in terms of producing food for yourself or producing income from the market.
It starts from the farmer being able to have a reasonable production or be able to have resources to acquire that which they need for survival at household level. Because if you have, let me say, you be dependent only on sorghum, and it's a year in which sorghum does not grow, you are not likely to survive. So a resilient agriculture should give you options and opportunities to have multiple sub-enterprises in a system, which allows you to, as a household, to be able to make good of it. It has to be based on crops, has to be based with the livestock, has to have not only dependent on rainfall, it has to be probably some form of water management that permits you to do it. You should have some storage system that permits you to hold stocks from one year to the other, even at household level, and also reduce the level of losses, which in Africa is quite high, very shameful. About 30% of the grain crop produced in Africa is lost. Maybe 50% of the cassava produced in Africa is lost. So
we have less agreement and I think less focus currently on how to enhance the people side of the equation. So what type of agriculture, extension systems, training, what role for the rural education system, how to make sure that girls get through school and become agricultural entrepreneurs and not just women working the field, having no education and staying in misery.
I think building resilience in smallholder farmers is about people first and the macroeconomic conditions that will avail a conducive environment. And if we look at the people assets that are required to build resilience in a smallholder farming environment, first and foremost, it's the human asset. How many able-bodied, educated people are in the household?
Another, I think, really positive thing that has happened in the last couple of years, and some of it has been, I think, traced back to the 2008 food price crisis, is a renewed emphasis on nutrition. Because we're not anymore talking about food security, we're talking about food and nutrition security. And I think that's a development of the first importance, and that equally needs sustained commitment and policy for the future.
A lot of it is about better governance in Africa, strong political leadership that understands what's needed to tackle food insecurity. One problem is that European donors tend to act in isolation from each other. They talk to each other, but they don't really coordinate what they're doing so that what one donor does is matched by what another donor does. And I think that's one of the big challenges. There's a major role here for the European Commission, which is a major investor itself in agriculture in Africa. And it can do, in some ways, a great deal to coordinate what the other members of the European Union are doing.